It's a cruel job. It wears you down. In Barcelona, you always feel like you're not valued, you're mistreated. That's how the club works. Those are not my words, the words of a pundit or a journalist in Spain. Those are the words of Barcelona legend and outgoing manager Xavi Hernandez. And even as a Benfica supporter myself, in a way, it's a little bit sad to hear those things from somebody who has clearly been ground down continuously over the years by the constraints he's had while managing Barcelona. But with those constraints came the pressure to succeed, given the club's future was dependent upon it. And that's not even considering the media circus and scrutiny that comes with being the Barca manager. I guess some would say, hey, game's the game when it comes to that pressure, but you know me, guys. I like to look at these individuals as humans. Shame on me for that. But anyway, as you know, we'll be going over everything surrounding Xavi's resignation, things from the club side, the dramatic evening following that wild match against Villarreal, that was dramatic enough, and who the club may be considering to take Xavi's position. If you're new around here and you want more from us, if you find yourself enjoying this, try the subscribe button. It's free. Now, I actually did a video just last month about Barcelona and whether at the time you would consider the results to be crisis-worthy, just looking at things on the pitch, not the financial side. Which at that time they weren't, and I pointed to the fact that the things that Barcelona needed to fix at that time weren't overly nebulous. They were constantly underperforming their XG in the attack and couldn't finish off chances for the life of them. And then at the other end of the pitch, they were suffering defensively as the lack of Ter Stegen no doubt contributes to that. I pointed to how he would be back in the new year, and with Pedri returning as well, things could turn around for Barcelona. You can't underplay how important a keeper that defenders can trust can make a difference in their defensive performances, as well as Ter Stegen's ability to command the box and organize the defense like perhaps Iñaki Peña can't. There's also something crazy going on with players such as Jules Koundé and Araujo. These two were previously some of La Liga's top defenders, but they look all out of sorts these days. It's become so bad that you even have João Cancelo admitting that he was an absolute disaster against Villarreal. At least they're self-aware. Going on to say that Cancelo played the worst 45 minutes of his career. That was his own admission. They cannot stop conceding, and Peña is a big part of that as well, as when players have no confidence in their keeper, it changes how they play. The example I love to point to is Liverpool. They had a great back line in 2018, but ended up losing in every competition, and basically that same back line went on to win the Champions League the next year, and collected an insane 97 points in the Premier League, yet somehow still got second to Pep. The difference for me, Alisson and Karius, not only for the shot stopping, but when a defender is confident in their keeper behind them, they aren't second guessing everything they do. They can just play and focus on their own job. So from when I made that video last month on Barcelona, I published it prior to them beating Almeria and then taking their winter break. Since then, they've had 5 wins and 4 losses. They've conceded 19 goals in those 9 matches, an average of 2.1 goals per match. They've also scored more too, however, scoring 20 goals or 2.2 goals per game. Given their attack was truly failing them prior, they actually improved in that department. Shout out to guys like Ferran Torres for their performances lately. However, Barcelona's defense got worse. Given last season Barcelona built their title-winning campaign on their tight defense, this was an unexpected development. You'd at least have thought that Xavi would have maintained that kind of defending, of which the injuries he's dealt with haven't helped back there. And hey, maybe the loss of Ter Stegen is as big of a deal as I initially thought. But they've seemingly sacrificed their defense for their attack. And this terrible defense saw them lose the Supercopa to Real Madrid in an embarrassing fashion, 4-1 in the final. They also crashed out of the Copa del Rey, losing 4-2 after extra time to Athletic Club. In the league, despite that late exhilarating win against Real Betis, their most recent loss to Villarreal saw them sink to 4th following Atleti's win over Valencia. That means they are 11 points behind first with a match in hand, and Athletic Club are circling around them like sharks as well, just waiting to take their spot. Just 2 weeks ago, a few days after losing the Supercopa final, Xavi said to the press, quote, "If there are no trophies this season, you're going to kill me." And now that they are out of both the Copa del Rey and face a pretty daunting task to catch up in La Liga, the killing has come, but on Xavi's terms, because it's not likely they'll win the Champions League, right? In September of 2023, with everyone around the club still very happy following their La Liga triumph the season prior, Xavi renewed his contract with the club. His previous deal was actually due to expire in June of 2024, and his new deal extended their prospective relationship to that of June of 2025, an additional year thanks to the success they had found already and were looking to build upon. It could only go up from there, right? But then everything that we spoke of in the previous section and that previous video happened. And so we were left with the headlines that leaked out of Montjuic almost 2 hours after Barcelona's come from behind loss to Villarreal. Honestly, that loss was wild. 2-0 down at home. They pull it back to 3-2, only to lose 5-3. Crazy. Xavi was incredibly late to his post-match press conference, and as the days have gone by, we have learned exactly why that is. There were 2 meetings that took place after the loss to Villarreal. The first one didn't involve Xavi that much. It involved a bunch of board members and people close to President Laporta as they were discussing what their options were in light of the recent poor run of results and the suspected lack of silverware that Barcelona would have this season if things were to continue on this trajectory. So they were considering that and what the lack of Champions League football would do to them financially, while also considering that their hands were tied a bit when it comes to sacking Xavi and bringing in another manager mid-season, as Barcelona are in trouble again financially, which will have implications on their salary limit in La Liga. They're not out of the woods financially, not even close. Manager wages do indeed count towards their salary limit as well. And so it's a chicken and the egg situation. We want to sack Xavi now because we can't risk missing out on the Champions League and the money that brings. But then again, we also can't sack him now as we can't afford a financial payout to Xavi, and we can't even think about paying another manager that has the requisite ability to ensure that we make the Champions League. So what do? But this is the bed that Barcelona made for themselves. Then Laporta allegedly received a text from Xavi saying that he wanted to meet with the president, and the second meeting of the night commenced. Xavi told Laporta of his desire to resign, and knowing the precarious position Barcelona are in financially, he decided to leave at the end of the season of his own accord, a major financial boon to the club. You'd expect nothing less from someone who has lived and breathed Barca his entire life, right? Xavi then entered the press room and was flanked by his brother, who is also his agent, as well as his wife. That was certainly out of character, which no doubt got the journalists a buzz with confusion. And I mean, coupled with the delay from the final whistle to now, there was absolutely something big to be said. His players had all left the stadium already. And Xavi went on to say, quote, "I had made up my mind for days, a decision had already been made, and it was just a matter of timing and finding the right time to reveal it. I told the president Laporta just today. I think I'm doing the right thing. I'm using common sense. The club needs a change. Right now, the dynamic we're in at all levels is too negative. It's a cruel job. It wears you down. In Barcelona, you always feel like you're not valued, you're mistreated. That's how the club works. From a mental health perspective, it's tough too. I'm a positive guy, but the battery levels keep running out, and at some point, you realize there's no point in staying." This comes after Xavi had said a few weeks prior that he would pack up and leave the club if he felt like he was no longer a positive influence on it. Those close to him say that he also has felt liberated in making his decision to leave at the end of the season, as the club had worn him down too much to continue. Plenty of media, some of which has been linked below in my sources, as per usual, have pointed to the fact that Xavi was a manager who was perhaps guilty of reading the opinions of the media far too much, to the point where this toxicity had affected his mental health to a great degree. When you couple that with some of Barcelona's executives also questioning his performances despite all of the financial restraints, and Xavi felt like he had few that were actually behind him and fighting in his corner, supporting him at Barcelona. But all of this pressure that was put on Xavi comes from the decisions that Barcelona have made when it comes to gambling on their future profits by selling off assets, with the catch being that they must have success in that time frame. That doesn't make for an easy environment for both the players and the manager. Barcelona were already in a poor place performance-wise prior to this, seemingly just cracking under the pressure of the badge. Now you throw the finances in the mix, and it's a difficult situation for anybody to manage. That said, with the restraints that Xavi had, he still managed to win a league title, and this season, he made it out of the Champions League group stage, the first time that Barcelona have managed to do so since the 2020-21 season, 3 seasons ago. Is that good enough for Xavi to be considered a success? Maybe not. I mean, we aren't at the end of the season yet. But when you look at the number of issues he's had to deal with, I mean, it feels like there's a new La Masia graduate making their debut every match week. It doesn't make for the easiest job in the world, which exposes just how incredibly thin the squad is. That's not on Xavi. Their issues run far deeper, and the next manager will find it similarly difficult to find success that goes beyond what Xavi achieved. Do you think that a new manager will have Barcelona with this squad and all of these constraints winning the Champions League or regularly bossing La Liga? Maybe La Liga, but even so, it's hard to see. And the fact that Girona is on a miracle run, this freak thing that's happening, makes Barca look worse. Now, following the loss of Villarreal, two of the leaders in Xavi's squad, as well as João Cancelo, both stood by the manager and said that the struggles Barcelona were having were completely on the players. Frankie de Jong spoke after the match, saying, quote, "There is full faith in the mister. The coaching staff are doing good work. We players are to blame. We have the talent. If people cannot see that, then it is our fault." Araujo echoed this, as did Cancelo, who, as mentioned, pointed how dreadful he in particular was against Villarreal. That being said, 48 hours after the announcement, and we are starting to hear a lot of murmurs from those close to the club that claim that plenty of players respected Xavi as a coach, but didn't think that he had the tactical nous that the manager of a club such as Barcelona necessitated. This came from both members of the squad and those at the executive level, allegedly. However, as Laporta was one of the holdouts when it came to not wanting to sack Xavi mid-season, due to financial stuff, and because he respects him, what was his say on the situation? On Sunday, he spoke to the media saying, quote, "On the sporting side, it is true that this season things are not going as we had planned. We came from winning La Liga and the Spanish Supercopa with an improved squad. We had better expectations, but they are not being fulfilled. We have to be aware that we have to reverse this situation." One thing I disagree with, and maybe it was just the wording, but I don't know how much the squad has improved from last season. The transfer window was super underwhelming. Having spent just over 3 million euros on Romeo, bringing in Gundogan is great, but the rest is So the natural question will be, who will be taking the mantle from Xavi? Of course, we don't know. There are still many months to go before the season is even up. But like with anything when it comes to predictions, all we can do is let the past and present kind of guide us into speculation for the future. That's all a prediction is, right? In the past, Xavi wasn't actually Laporta's first choice to replace Ronald Koeman. In fact, he may not have even been his second choice. It was well documented that Laporta wanted to try something new at Barcelona, to try to breathe some new life into the club's football and take a departure from the Barcelona school of football and the tactics that have guided them for so long. What direction did he want to take? That of those who had provided Barcelona with so many beatdowns in the past, German football. Laporta wanted Hansi Flick. Flick, of course, was overseeing Bayern during the infamous 8-2 destruction of Barcelona. But if he couldn't have him, then he wanted either Julian Nagelsmann or Thomas Tuchel. None were available at the time, as Nagelsmann had just joined Bayern, Tuchel was fresh off of winning the Champions League with Chelsea, and Flick was the manager of Germany now. Or then, I should say. Well, this coming summer, all three could potentially be available. Flick is currently out of a job, having been sacked from the German national team, as he had the second lowest points per game in the history of German national team managers, which is pretty shocking to see. Nagelsmann replaced Flick, but only on a short-term contract to oversee Germany at Euro 2024. And Tuchel, he's currently the manager of Bayern Munich, but he seems to be very weary of the job based on how he has spoken to the media over this past season. And speaking of which, Tuchel almost openly campaigned for the Barcelona job, as he was at a Bayern fan event in Heidenheim on Sunday. So after the news about Xavi stepping down at the end of the season had come out, Tuchel said, quote, "Moving abroad would appeal to me again. Spain has an extraordinary league. From my perspective and based on my experience working with Spaniards, they are characterized by a tremendous amount of self-confidence. When you speak with Spanish players, I quickly get the sense that you are engaging with the person." Yes, he said this at a fan event. Wow. So given Laporta's previous wish to take the German route, perhaps this could be a match made in heaven. We'll see, as some board members are allegedly pushing back, as they want someone who can speak Spanish in order to continue to integrate the younger La Masia products into the team, as well as all the other Spanish products that they have on the side. We can speedrun a few other names, however. Naturally, people mentioned Jose Mourinho, which would be seen as sacrilegious to hire him in Barcelona, even if he previously was employed by the club under Bobby Robson. Things have become far too complicated since then. What with the win with Inter and how absolutely toxic things between the two clubs got while Mourinho was in charge of Real Madrid. If he was to get the job, I would be absolutely shocked, as his tactics are also a massive departure from what Barcelona as a club and the supporters expect to see as far as entertainment value. Mikel Arteta has also been linked with the job, and given he's a La Masia product, used to coach under Guardiola, the links to the club deepen, right? Well, today, actually, he responded quite negatively to the suggestions that he may take the job, saying, quote, "What you read yesterday, I don't know where it's coming from, and it's totally untrue. I'm really upset about it. I could not believe it. I don't know where it's coming from. It has no source, and I think we have to be very cautious when we talk about personal things, to put it in the way it was put yesterday." So unless there's a big U-turn from him, I wouldn't expect him to take on the job. He's still deep in his own Arsenal project, and to ditch it now would be a kind of a weird move, no? Another former Barcelona man, Thiago Motta, is doing fantastically well with Bologna this season in Serie A. Having previously managed the sinking ship that was Spezia, he took over Bologna in September of 2022, and they have gradually improved as time has gone on. He knows Barcelona, having been there from 1999 to 2007. So there's someone who will be considered. Michel of Girona will naturally be considered as well, given he is leading the Cinderella story at the top of La Liga. Girona, of course, is in Catalonia, for those who are unaware, so the logistics for him personally wouldn't be too much of a headache, and he's not the biggest name yet, even though his stock is high right now. Another favorite is Garcia Pimienta, current manager of Las Palmas, who are shocking the league as well with their solid performances. The newly promoted side sits in 9th at the moment, just 5 points behind Real Sociedad in 6th place. Pimienta also has that Barcelona DNA that they champion, as he coached in La Masia from 2006 to 2021, and before that went through La Masia as a player. Right now, it really is just a guessing game, as we don't know what Barcelona will be able to pull off financially, and as I mentioned earlier, the manager's salary does indeed count toward their La Liga salary limit, so that has to be considered. That could rule out someone like Tuchel or Nagelsmann, and thus bring in a name like Pimienta maybe, or who knows, it could be someone else altogether. Like I said earlier though, whoever takes on the job will face the same difficulties that Xavi did. Like a Rafa Marquez, who I didn't mention before, but he could be considered. A new coach won't fix their financial situation and the limits that place on the manager when it comes to squad building, nor will it lessen the pressure for success, as the club's fate is dependent on success financially. Anyways, that's all from me here, guys. If you enjoyed this video and you found it helpful, then consider dropping a like, and hey, subscribe if you're new around here for more from Rabona TV. I'm Adrian, and we'll see you in the next video. Ciao.